Growing and scaling a writing and speaking business, that doesn't happen on its own. It requires a certain mindset and certain strategies. So what is the mindset? And what are some of those strategies? Well, to help us with that and more is Penguin published author, public speaker, strategy coach, Ironman athlete. I'm running out of breath just reading this. And maybe the most important of all, chief executive mum to two daughters, Veronica Lorca-Smith. Welcome.
Thank you, Mike. I'm so excited to be here from Hong Kong, talking directly to Australia.
Well, I can guarantee you're not as excited as I am, but it's really great to have you on board. And you're in Hong Kong and I'm here in Melbourne, Australia. And the distance doesn't matter because thanks to live streaming with Substack, we're on screen together and we're being joined by viewers, and we love our live viewers and those watching the recording and also listening to the podcast audio as well. We've got a very important subject, Veronica, haven't we? And that is helping our viewers to grow and scale a writing, speaking business. And you're the right person to speak to about that. But before we get onto that, chief executive mum to two daughters. How old are your daughters, Veronica?
The one just turned 8. We literally celebrated her birthday this weekend, and the other one is 9.
Oh, wonderful age, 8 and 9. And happy birthday to the young one who's just having her birthday this weekend. And would you consider that to be your greatest achievement in corporate and social and public life?
Yes, absolutely. I think being a mom has been the most wonderful experience, challenge, growing and learning every week. And every phase is different. So I always feel like I'm a new beginner. So absolutely, biggest satisfaction.
Now, Veronica, you have completed and participated in 100 triathletes worldwide. And not only that, there's another statistic here. I've got it down here. That's right. You've lived in 9 countries and you speak 9 languages fluently, including Mandarin Chinese. How do you fit all this in?
6 languages, not 9. To be honest, it's been part of my life. So a lot of it was the way I grew up. So I'm originally from Spain, but from a very young age, we had to move countries because of my dad's job. So every 4 years, we moved to a different place that happened to have a different language. So we first moved to France when I was 5. Then we moved to Brazil, where they speak Portuguese, where I was 11. Then we moved to the Netherlands. And then I got addicted to this traveling thing. So as soon as I was old enough to go by myself, I did. And I lived in Italy, where I did a scholarship at university. And then many years ago, I moved to Taiwan, and then China, and now Hong Kong, which is where I learned Chinese. So that part has really been an entire life dedicated to traveling and learning about cultures and languages.
So there was no room for procrastination in any of these achievements then?
Yeah, there was not a lot of room. It was also a choice. Many of these things, I always went for the harder choice, let's say. So it was partly the way that life happened, but also partly the way that I designed it. So part by default, but part by design.
Now, you did write a book about procrastination. It's one of those published. The Anti-Procrastinator is the title. Did you write that based only on theory, or did you have some personal experience in the past about putting off the things you wanted to do?
Yeah, it was totally from personal experience, my own, and also a lot of people, friends, relatives that I interviewed. And I think all of us, when we're going to do something, there is some type of resistance. It doesn't come easy to say, I'm going to go on a live session today, don't know who's going to show up. So we always have these mental roadblocks. I call them the anchors. And so a lot of it was based on my own experience and how I overcome the fear of speaking in a language that is not my first language, of showing up on camera when I'm an introvert, of going on stage when I hadn't spoken in public forever. So a lot of it is actually, it's not theory, it's based on my real experience. And I did a lot of research as well to understand the brain and the science and the neuroscience behind why we procrastinate. So it was this mix of personal experience as well as psychology, and just a lot of examples so that it can feel very practical and very real for someone who is struggling with procrastination.
Just to complete the profile of who we're talking to here, viewers, Veronica Lauger-Smith, and then we can get into the nitty-gritties about some of what you can help us with, this concept of a writing, speaking business and growing and scaling such. Now, you have a corporate background, and I note there in your background that you've worked with such iconic companies as Apple and also Estee Lauder. What was the capacity of your work with those such companies and others?
So both of them are pretty senior roles. And I was, and I'm still based in Hong Kong. So Apple was really exciting because even though it was already a monster as a brand, it wasn't present in Hong Kong. So they hired me to help with the development of Apple in the region, in Hong Kong and also Asia. So there was no Apple store. And so we really had this startup feeling within this massive organization. So it was a lot of fun, and also tried to see how the Apple culture, which is very American, of course, how it could fit in with an Asian culture, specifically Chinese culture, that is very, very different. And so how to make that transition, how to have this blend between both cultures, how to make sure that even if you're in Hong Kong, you still feel the same experience that you could feel at Apple Melbourne or Apple New York, for example. So that was very exciting. And my role was started as a business manager, and then I was promoted to a business leader, which was the head of the region for everything that had to do with Apple B2B. So basically Apple devices and services in the corporate environment. So that was Apple. And then Estee Lauder was another very interesting role because I was in charge of all the retail teams for one of the brands across the entire Asia Pacific, which was 14 countries from Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and then North Asia as well. So I did a lot of traveling to places like Japan, Korea, China. So it was extremely challenging, extremely diverse, and very, very interesting role as well.
Good heavens, Veronica, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed here because this is such a complete background and history. It's really something to have you join us, and now we can really appreciate, viewers, what kind of weight we can add to the tips that Veronica may give us on what we're doing on Substack, viewers, and what our plans and hopes are, particularly if we want to build a business and monetize it, and many of us do. So let's just complete this picture now, Veronica. You are on Substack. The title of your publication is The Lemon Tree Mindset. You've got over 14,000 subscribers. Why did you call it The Lemon Tree Mindset?
A lot of people ask me that question, and I love the origin story. I always talk about it. And so basically there is one part that we haven't talked about, and which is how and why I left the corporate world to start my own business. And that happened in 2022. During the pandemic, I was locked abroad in Australia. So due to quarantine policies and all this mess that we had to live with, I went on holiday thinking I was going on holiday with my two daughters who were 3 and 4, and we were not able to go back to Hong Kong. So my husband was here in Hong Kong with our dog. Then we were locked abroad first in Spain and then in Australia, where my husband is from. So we were on the Gold Coast. And I started to look for jobs and send CVs to try to find a job for over 6 months. After 6 months, I was not successful. And I said, well, I have to start doing something myself. And so that big challenge, which at the time felt very disappointing and frustrating, is really what led to my reinvention. Is when I started writing, when I started speaking on podcasts, when I started writing books, and just realizing that there was a different path. And so I created this mindset that says that when life gives you lemons, you shouldn't just make lemonade. You should use the seeds to plant your own lemon tree, which is the name as well of my first book, which is called The Lemon Tree Mindset, which was born before my publication. And so that lots of tips that I encourage people to adopt, which is, in life, we're always going to have challenges and obstacles, but you always have an opportunity to look at things differently and to see, well, if it's a challenge, what can I learn from these? Or is there a different path? Which in my case, I didn't know until I created it. So that's the entire philosophy, really.
Oh, I love it. So when life gives you a lemon, don't just make lemonade, plant the pits and grow some lemon trees. I love that. A little bit like don't give a hungry man a fish, give him a fishing rod and teach him how to fish, or a person. I love it. All right. Veronica, writing on Substack. Now you're writing on Substack. You've got over 14,000 subscribers. In fact, do you have a pay? Well, I do know you have a paywall. You have paying subscribers. In fact, a lot of your posts are actually behind the paywall, aren't they? You publish a lot of your articles for your paid subscribers. Why that strategy?
So actually, to give the full picture, I do most of it for free, to be honest. So a lot of it, whenever I use the paywall, my strategy is that I don't want to give a bad experience or an experience that feels cut to my readers. I want everyone to have a good experience. And so my strategy is often to have the entire post that everyone can read. But when it comes to the implementation or something that is more actionable, or maybe there's an exercise, that is what I would put behind the paywall. So that is not a bad experience, but it's like, hey, if you want to have an elevated experience, then this is what you can do to upgrade and have access to everything. So that's in regards to the paywall. That's one of the strategies that I use. Another one is I like serializing content. So instead of having random posts about different topics that happen every week, I like to bundle things under a theme. For example, now for July, I want to talk about how to create a portfolio career, meaning how to create a diversified range of income streams as a creative entrepreneur. And I want to do that because it is a model that I've used. So it's really based on my own experience, my own mistakes, my own win. And so instead of one day talking about how you create a career portfolio, and then the next day talking about something else, I'm going to divide it into 6 or 7 different income streams. And every week I will talk about one of them. So the first one will be about how to launch a coaching business. And then it might be about how to grow your paid community. And then it's about how to launch digital products and courses. That has worked very well for me in terms of monetization, because I always leave a part behind the paywall and people see that there is a value that goes beyond just one post. So it really creates this sense of continuation. It creates this sense that they're building onto something. And I've done this many times now for over 2 years. And I would say it's one of the most successful strategies in terms of monetization.
When it comes to monetization of your creativity, based on your wealth of experience, your background, etc., and all of your philosophies, is there one part of what you do, Substack, digital products, coaching, speaking, that derives the majority of your income? I'm not asking you how much, but I'm asking you what percentage would you suggest?
Absolutely. And public speaking, mostly because of the audience. When you're in a B2C space like books or digital courses or this type of products or services, you really have to rely on volume. And it's quite hard to get 100, even 1,000 people to buy something. However, on the B2B space, if I do one keynote or one workshop, it can be $5,000 for one single session. And so you only need to do 2, 3, 4 a month to really be able to have a strong monetization booster. So personally, I like to have both because I think it's nice to diversify. I travel a lot. I'm going to Spain, for example, next week, so I won't be able to do a lot of the public speaking. And so in my case, it's very seasonal. So depending on the month, I will see that June, for example, was extremely good for public speaking. I actually have a session today. I had a session Friday, Thursday. I have another one this coming Friday. But then July is completely dead because I'm going on holidays, and for many companies it's also quite a slow month. So that's why I talk about a portfolio career, because if you're smart about seasons and different products and services, you can see what makes more sense during one time of the year.
Wonderful. It makes perfect sense. So, B2B, for those viewers who may not yet be familiar with that, business to business as opposed to B2C, business to consumer. So, what you're doing on Substack and the audience we've got right now with us live and watching the replay, listening to the podcast, they would be, you'd consider it a B2C. We're doing a B2C environment now, business to consumer, right, Veronica? So, business to business. Well, let's wind it back a little bit. Let's think now of the viewer who is writing on Substack. Now, maybe they've got the paywall, maybe they don't, but they're writing. They've got some background experience. Maybe they're retired or retiring, and they're thinking, well, I'd like to do a bit more, and I would like to monetize. What would be the thing that you see in your experience that holds people back the most from bridging from having an idea, putting it into practice, whether that's writing and publishing or writing and then speaking like what you're doing now?
So it's a really good question because I get that very often. And to be honest, it's not a lack of strategy or not knowing the technology, or because all these things are relatively easier to overcome. It's the mindset. I have people who have a lot of experience tell me that I have nothing interesting to talk about, or why would I go on a live session? What value can I add? And so a lot of it is about convincing yourself that you have value to add. And there's one very interesting thing that's called recency bias, which means that we tend to focus and remember only the very recent things. And why this matters is many people, they forget how hard it was to learn what they learned or to achieve what they have achieved. And when you learn something and you already have that knowledge, you assume that it's not a big deal, that everybody knows it. And so we forget that many people are beginners. We forget that some people have never done a live session. We forget that many people have never published a post, for example. And so I think the first advice that I would give is don't dismiss your own journey. If you were to write down what happened in the last 6 months, what happened in the last year, and how could someone benefit from it, you would really have an aha moment. And in fact, for me, when I started speaking in public, at first I was like, well, what am I going to share? I mean, sure, I have experience in the corporate world, but so do many people. And then I realized, hold on, I have managed these large teams in multicultural environments for over 15 years. I just need to repackage it into something that other leaders that want to manage large teams in multicultural environments would find useful. And so it's this mindset of first understanding that you have value. And second, it's not just, oh, this is what I've done, here it goes. Is how am I going to make it interesting for that specific group of people? And so whether you're retired and you want to talk about your career and the challenges that you've achieved, or perhaps you've acquired a skill, even if you're not super advanced, but if you have published a book, for example, that's an incredible knowledge for someone who hasn't published a book.
Mindset. The lemon tree mindset, the mindset, and mindset before the technical aspects of whatever's required to write a post, publish a post, get viewers, subscribers. Penguin to publish it. How did the Penguin come about? Penguin Publishing, not just Penguin. It's Penguin Random House. How did that come about? Were you approached, or did you pitch yourself to them?
I pitched myself to them. So by that time, I had already published 3 books. 2 were self-published on Amazon. I self-published because no publisher would take them. So that was a great experience because I had to learn about the industry myself. Then I published a 3rd book with an indie publisher. And in early 2024, I had this vision board that I really wanted to go with a big publisher. So it was something that I was actively visualizing and working towards. And I started to look at people who had published books in a similar style where I wanted to do personal development, self-improvement, and to see who they have published with. And that's why I came up with the Penguin Random House in my region in Asia. And so I started to network and look around, and I was given the contact of the president or vice president of Penguin Random House in this region. And I practically approached them on LinkedIn. And I wasn't expecting much, to be honest. I did a little pitch. And what really helped is to pitch not so much the book, but to pitch myself and tell them, this is how active I am. I have a community on Substack. I'm writing daily on LinkedIn. This is my experience. I do a lot of live sessions because one of the things that many authors or aspiring authors miss is the point that publishers, they're not only interested in the book, they're interested in who is behind the book, because that's the person who's going to drive the sales. And so if you tell them, hey, this is my book, great idea. But then you tell them, this is everything that I have behind, all the machinery that I have to make it work. I'm going to do interviews. I'm going to do live sessions. I'm going to promote it in my community. I personally think that that's what gave me the push to at least say, let me talk to this person and see if there's something here that we can explore. And so we jumped on a call. That's how it happened. And when we jumped on the call, I didn't even have a clear idea about the anti-procrastination. I just had a couple of ideas that I wanted to validate with them. So it was a bit of a bet because I had no idea how that was going to go. I thought maybe she was going to be like, hey, why are you wasting my time if you don't even have a clear pitch? But I explained to her and I said, look, I know the genre that I want to write about, but I want to make sure that it's something that I validate with you first so that we're both aligned. We know that there's a market. And so that's how the conversation started. And then from there, I created the whole idea of the anti-procrastinator.
What a wonderful story. And two words come to mind. Now, obviously, you're confident. You've got the confidence and the poise on camera. We see that. Is that something you've carried through your entire life? Have you always been a confident person, a doer that has self-belief?
Not really. To be honest, when I was a kid, I was extremely shy. And if you had told me or told anyone who knew me that one day I would be on camera, they'd be like, no way. I used to be, just to set the scene, the very shy kid in the class who had very good grades, but I would only speak if I was asked or if I was 105% sure of the answer. So it wasn't natural at all. And in fact, I always felt that it was something that held me back. I was always surrounded by a lot of alpha type personalities, type A personalities, extroverts at Apple. As you can imagine, everyone was very driven. It was also very masculine because I was in a more business/IT side of things. And I only started to really put myself out there when I went through this whole pandemic experience and I was unemployed and I was already 41. And I told myself, look, you can't hide anymore. You can't wait for people to ask you to share the answers. You can't be hiding at the back of the room. You really have to put yourself out there. And I wasn't confident at all. And in fact, my first podcast was only when I was 41. I was so nervous and it was just me because that podcast, it was just a pre-recorded podcast. It wasn't an interview show like we are doing now. And all I say is that practice is what makes confidence. Yes, you might see a very confident woman right now, and honestly, I think I am. We had a lot of tech issues before we started today, as Mike knows, and I wasn't present at all. I was like, well, these things happen. But the reason why I'm able to show up composed and very calm is because I've done over 100 of those. And so start somewhere. You can be 40, 41. You can start however you start. I think the most important thing is that you start. You set a bar, however high or low, and then you take it from there. So confidence is a learned skill.
Somebody said to me, a coach, mentor, some time ago, many years ago, actually, when you're listening to someone with experience and something to offer based on lived experience, you really only need one insight that you can take away. And I think there's an insight there for some that Veronica, you've just shared that you, as a younger person, you didn't have the confidence and you were, as you say, quite shy, and yet now forward into the present, you're very confident, present with poise, not overconfident. That's certainly not the impression. But for those viewers who may be feeling shy, hesitant, procrastinating, want to do it, but something's holding them back, listen again, if you listen to the replay or watch the replay here of how, not only what Veronica said, but how she said it, and take note of that, because you too can do the first step. Maybe it won't be a published book, right, Veronica? Our viewer may not be a published author. They may not be a B2B platform speaker earning $5,000 for a keynote. but they may just get 100 subscribers on Substack, and that could be the fulfillment that they're seeking, right?
Exactly. And it's the mindset. It doesn't matter so much what you're going to do. It's the mindset of saying, I don't care if I look like a fool. I looked like a fool when I did my first triathlon. I looked like a fool when I did my first leg session. I didn't know what was going on. But it's that mindset of saying, I don't mind because I know that I'm chasing something, that I have a calling. And so if your calling is, I want to reach more people with my message, that's the bigger picture. And you have to do whatever you have to do to get there. Maybe it's turning on the camera, even if you're petrified, or maybe it's reaching out to someone and saying, hey, let's do an interview. But that's the mindset. Like, look at the bigger picture and what you're calling and what you want to achieve. And knowing that, yes, it's going to be a hard path to get there with ups and downs, but it's part of what we sign up for.
Wonderful, Veronica. Now, we do have a question from a viewer. I'll just touch the screen and see who that is. David White asks, how many of the Lemon Tree Mindset books have you sold?
Well, definitely one for David White, because I know that you actually bought one of them. Hi, David. So to be honest, around 900 or so. So this is this one, the one that I was saying at the beginning. It's a very, very thin book, very, very practical. And I'm very proud of this because even though it doesn't sound like a huge number, to me, this book is the most important book that I ever read. The first book that I wrote, because it marked a beginning and a before and after, because from this book, because no one bought it at the beginning, I decided that I was going to launch a newsletter that is called the exact same name, The Lemon Tree Mindset, so that I would find my readers. And so if you're writing a book and you don't have a lot of sales, especially if you're starting, especially if it's the first one, self-published, I would say, again, use the seeds to plant your own lemon tree. So in the case of David, for example, I believe he talks about fixing ACs, for example, and he published a book about that topic. If that book doesn't sell very well, you can turn it into a course. You can turn it into a series of videos. I think the number, it's just a number. I think it's what the potential is. And if I hadn't published the Lemon Tree Mindset, I wouldn't have a book deal with Penguin Random House. I'm 100% sure about it because I wouldn't have taken that first step. So yes, numbers are important, but don't let them blind you to the point that defines what success looks like, because to me, it defines what potential looks like.
So when we're talking about success, and we all have our own way of measuring and determining success as it applies to us. Now, you know, the old theory was if you're a published author, you must be very wealthy because you make a lot of money with your books. Yeah, okay, so you know where I'm going already. You're a step ahead. So the lucrativeness of having a published book, is it the book sales and the commissions that you get from that, the royalties, or is it the fact that the book is like a credibility authority card and you get entry into through doors that you might not have got through?
Sure. So I can only speak from my experience. And to give some context, with the traditional publishers like Penguin Random House and Macmillan and all these big names, the royalty is usually around 8%. So you can imagine like peanuts, right? Royalty peanuts. And so in my experience, those peanuts haven't been enough to justify and pay for my bill, at least not the Hong Kong bills in any case. And so that hasn't been my experience. But was it a good decision? Am I happy with having gone with the traditional publisher? Absolutely. Because in my case, that book was a really good stamp for credibility. And when you go to fair or public speaking event, for example, and you're a published author by a big brand, it just boosts your credibility. When you're introducing yourself to potential clients and you mention, oh, I'm a public speaker, this is what I do, and I'm a published author, it really helps you with that brand overall. And also this works better, of course, in the nonfiction books, which is my case. I turn it and sessions that are related to the topic of productivity, time management, ethical procrastination. Also, I have multiple workshops and webinars that are focused on the same topic. So you can focus this epicenter of something bigger that you can create around it, especially when you're a public speaker and you're talking about services like workshops and things like that.
Now, when you talk about the speaking, okay, so we've got the writing and the published author bit very clear. So, and you pitched to Penguin for that book publishing deal. Now, the speaking side of things, that is look, most of us know that's a very lucrative. I mean, you said you get. Did you not say you get paid your fees $5,000 for a keynote, or that's what you're being paid recently, or what coming up, something?
There's a range. Right now, if it's smaller, it might be something around 2,500. If it's a bigger one with a bigger audience, usually a hybrid one, it's around 5,000 US dollars for one session.
And are you pitching yourself actively for these speaking gigs, keynote speaking gigs?
So not as much as I should, to be honest, because I don't really like the whole cold outreach. Not my style. I don't really like to just randomly reach out to people. I don't mind doing a live session like we're doing now because it doesn't feel intrusive. Whoever wants to do it today, they're welcome to do it. But me knocking on doors, it just doesn't fit well with me. It's something that I'm working on. So what was my strategy? I do create a lot of content, especially on LinkedIn, which is where my decision makers are, but also so I've learned how to add NCO so that when you type leadership speaker Hong Kong, I come up one of the first speakers. And so most of the time, my clients find me, which is great. But of course, it means that I'm not as proactive as I could be. But I just speak in a lot of panels, for example, like in June, I spoke for a very big panel for an event here in Hong Kong called the Lockdown Benefits Forum. I do a lot of interviews like we're doing today. I publish on LinkedIn pretty much every single day. And one of the things that happens in the public speaking is the ripple effect and the compound effect really pays off. In my case, for example, being in Hong Kong, I work a lot with insurance companies, law firms, banks. What happens is if one insurance sees that you're working with a competitor, they're like, oh, this speaker is working with our competitors. They must be good. And so it creates a little bit this positive bias where you enter the speaker circuit in one specific industry, and that really plays to your advantage. And there you really have to put yourself out there, write a lot of content. Every week I'm updating my website with all my public appearances. You can check it in my name, veronicajurgasmith.com. And I'm very diligent in making sure that I update everything.
See, now, just listening to you, I've got a bit of a background in speaking and performing on stages. I used to be a former entertainer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what I'm seeing, listening to you, listening, what I'm seeing and hearing is you're so articulate. Okay, I haven't heard many ers or ahs or head scratching, wondering, well, where was I? I mean, every word leads perfectly to the next word. Does that come naturally for you, or have you had some training in this?
I think both. One, I'm an introvert, and I don't know if we have introverts in the audience, but we tend to be very careful with the words that we use. And for good or for bad, it's almost like we don't want to waste words. And so when I say something, I've thought about it. And if I don't have anything to say, I'll just be very short and very concise. So partly in being an introvert. The other part, yes, I took quite a bit of coaching, especially when I started. This was something completely new to me. And I had a lot of little tics that I wasn't even aware of, like feeling uncomfortable with silence, which goes back to the point of confidence. If I need 2 seconds to think about a point, now I'll just take my 2 seconds without being all nervous about it. But yeah, having a coach definitely helps. And it is an investment. So if you don't want to make that investment, there is one tip that really helped me, and that costs $0. You record yourself, whether it's today, you watch a recording afterwards, it doesn't matter. And then you watch it 3 times. And it's super uncomfortable. I hate listening to my own voice and seeing myself, but it really helps. The first time, you only watch the video without the sound. So you're going to be looking at your nonverbal gesture, your hands, your smile, eye contact, all of that stuff. The second one is all the sound, only the sound. Do you sound very flat? Are you speaking very fast? Which is something that I tend to do because I'm Spanish and we tend to speak very fast. And then the third one, you watch everything together. And I've learned so much from it, like how to smile more, because I want to smile more. It's an intentional decision. How to make sure that I don't speak too fast. I used to be very flat when I was speaking, or very fast. So you really discover a lot by kind of taking a spectator position and looking at yourself from that angle.
Well, there is insight. There's gold right there, Veronica. Thank you so much. Our viewers can appreciate that because that's another insight. Just that one. If that's all that the viewers take from this one, if they're thinking about doing live streaming, Substack, YouTube, Facebook, on the stage, B2B, whatever, public speaking, really, if you want to put it under an umbrella, this is what it is. And you've just given a fantastic tip as far as working to camera, and that'll be in the show notes. I'll make a highlight of that. But I heard what you said very clearly is record yourself for 10, 15 minutes, I think you said, and then watch only with sound off, listen only with no picture, and then the third time round is to watch and listen and take note of visual cues, voice pitching, and all of that comes with experience and training. And there's lots of people who can assist with that. There's books you can read, courses you can do, etc., etc., etc. Veronica, as always, time flies when you are having fun, and I'm so grateful that you've given us the time to be with us today. I do want to just acknowledge Brandon Elrich, who says, yes, with regards to introversion, yes, exactly. I'm an introvert, says Brandon, too, and I'm more careful with my words, just like you said, Veronica. And I think I want to give the final word to you, to our viewers. So our viewers have joined us because of the name. Veronica Looker-Smith is on the live stream with us. Veronica has her Substack, The Lemon Tree Mindset, with over 14,000 subscribers. She's got such a depth and breadth of experience in the corporate world. She's got the runs on the board, as we might say. And just got to check, if you'll pardon me now, this is where my confidence will come in. I'm going to look down on my notes to make sure I haven't missed something important, Veronica and viewers, because I don't want to miss something important. So just give me a moment. Yes, we covered that. We covered that. We covered that. Covered that. We've covered that. We've covered that. We've covered everything, Veronica. You've covered all the spaces. Fantastic. Well, let's leave the final word with you then, Veronica. I'll say goodbye now, and I will just say that because I'm having tech issues, I won't be able to end this with a button. I can't see the end button on the live. So, Veronica, when we're done, please just exit. And to the viewers, you'll just see a black screen for about 2 minutes before the technology cuts us off. Veronica, the last word with you to our viewers, please.
So I will go back to the same message. I don't think I need to send 20 messages. I go back to the reason why I started what I started, and the lemon tree mindset, and this idea that if you have the challenge, that if you're going through a dark time, there's always something positive that you can take from it. And so remember that, like when life gives you lemons, take the seed to plant your lemon tree. I think that is my message, and that is what I want to leave our viewers with.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Veronica. Thank you to our viewers who have just stayed with us live. Thank you for watching the recording and listening to the podcast. Be good to yourself and be good to others. Bye-bye for